Welcome to the Family Office Success Podcast, where we explore the strategies, the insights, and the best practices that help families and their advisors build and manage successful family offices. I am your host, Christi Van Wright, and each episode, we dive into the key elements of running a family office. Whether you're a family looking to structure your advisory team for long-term success, or you're a professional managing the complexities of a multi-generational enterprise. From financial oversight and operational efficiency to selecting the right advisors and creating a lasting legacy, this podcast is here to provide practical guidance and expert perspectives. Let's get started. Welcome to the Family Office Success Podcast, where we talk all things family office. Today, I am very excited to introduce you to Koby Willbanks with Continuum Legal. Koby and I have known each other for a little while now, and the services that she provides to families is so unique and so needed. Super excited to bring her to you today and help you guys get a feel for what it is that she does. Then you can decide if this is something that you might find helpful as well. So, Koby, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get to where you are at today?
Yes. So I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but I find looking back at my career, it obviously leads to this point, but in the moment, I was not intending it to lead here. So it's a happy accident. But the model I have now is as a concierge general counsel for family enterprises and family offices. And I started out with an undergrad degree in organizational psychology, which is how to build well-functioning teams in the workplace. And then after law school, I spent 4 years doing high net worth divorces. So we did some estate planning, understood the family unit. Then I moved over to commercial litigation, then business transactional work, which is way more fun and rewarding because I help people make money instead of them having to pay me money to walk away less happy than they started, which is usually the case with litigation. And so all these things have sort of combined to be the perfect combination of things for a concierge general counsel for families. Because I know businesses, I know litigation, I know the family unit and the personal legal items that come into play. And then I have this organizational psychology background, which helps me build the structure of the legal unit for these families that often don't have a legal structure in place.
I think that's so cool. We talk a lot about being the expert generalist, and that's the role that we provide for our families. It's our job to know a lot about kind of a broad spectrum, and then go find the people or the team to go really deep to really make something work for our family. You do the exact same thing as that expert generalist, just on the legal side for a family.
Yes, that's correct. It's a lot of business transactions, so contracts, mergers and acquisitions, entity formation and structuring, corporate compliance, board compliance type work, and everything else in between. And then I like to say I know enough to be dangerous, about estate planning and taxes and everything, but that just means I know enough to know when to bring the right people in. And I think I may have mentioned this to you before, but the quote, "A jack of all trades is a master of none," like people tend to take that in a bad way, but the rest of the quote, "but often more useful than a master of one." And so I always tell clients that yes, sometimes you need the specialist and they have a great place, especially in legal, to bring them in. But on a day-to-day basis, what you need is a super generalist.
Yeah. Well, and you need I think we've also talked about it. It's a lot of times you need someone who can get you to 80% to then say, yes, because it's that first 80% that's the research and is it the right thing to do? What are the pros? What are the cons? And it's the last 20% that it's like, okay, now we need the in-depth, the knowledge, the tie the bows on and dot the I's and cross the T's. But that first 80% doesn't need to be done by the specialist necessarily. It can be done by, is it going to make sense, to the point of, is it going to make sense or not?
Yes, and sometimes it's not worth paying for that last 20% given, each individual's client's risk profile and the amount of money on the line. Sometimes it's better to take the risk. but you need someone to advise you before you decide to take the risk.
Does seem like a smart thing to do. So your background absolutely supports, kind of that expert generalist on the legal side. What made you want to create this firm?
So that's a great question. And sometimes I ask myself that question all the time, but I love it. I love what I do. But basically, as I had worked in these different specialty areas and worked at different firms, there's things that you really like or that you don't like about every place that you work and every type of job you have. And I was piecing together what I wanted. And I really liked the idea of focusing on general counsel work, which is different than just having a loose team of specialists. In a big law firm, they have specialists in every area, but there's not anyone at the center sort of managing those people on behalf of the client. And then I also just love working with entrepreneurs. What I love most about my job is getting to know them, getting to know the families, understanding what their business is and what they want to accomplish, what their purpose is, and then tying in legal to those. And the traditional law firm model doesn't give the attorney the space to create that relationship with their client on a deep level. And so I initially started my firm both because I wanted to do this type of work, but also because I wanted to change the model that I was using to provide legal services. And so the traditional law firm model is usually hourly and you bill against a retainer, and people are hesitant to call their attorney until they're like 1 inch from the finish line. And then they are frustrated that the attorney then slows everything down. And that makes sense. It's the model that's broken, in that case, not any individual attorney. But I have a subscription model. And so it's the same fee every month for all communication. And so that way the client feels safe calling me. They know their bill's not going to go up. And it's a big peace of mind benefit that they know they can call me at any time about most things. And I can give them an initial answer, maybe the answer, but definitely at least an initial answer immediately because of my background. And then we have lots of legal strategy meetings, and they're really fun brainstorming sessions. And so that's where I get the real joy out of my work, is getting to know a lot about the client and their business and then helping them through those things. And so that's why I started my firm, because I wanted to be able to do that in a very organic way and build a firm tailored to those types of clients. And the traditional law firm, just the model is not.
Yeah, they're not built that way.
No, they're not. And I get it. They're built to serve large companies that have in-house legal departments and need to outsource to specialists, either for, like overflow work management or for risk management, honestly. But that doesn't make sense for family enterprises and family offices. They don't have a huge legal team of, 50 plus attorneys in-house that can manage those specialists, but they're put in the same position.
So sometimes, a family might have in-house legal counsel. That happens sometimes. Yes. Even if they still have the outsourced, even if they still have the official attorney, they have their in-house people to do a little bit about what you're talking about. Though I feel like when I've run across those people, they're real estate attorneys. So because the family's heavy in real estate, or they're business attorneys because the family does a lot of, M&A, small business type work. So how do you come in and sit alongside whoever might or might not be in that family structure already? How do you support a family in that environment?
So it's different all the time, but the most common scenarios are there is no in-house legal. There might be an employment specialist, like HR, not an attorney necessarily, but a head of HR. Or to your point, if they're like a real estate development or they just own a large real estate portfolio, they might have a specialist in that one area. But I come in and even if they have an attorney, that attorney is always overworked because one attorney can't do all those things all the time. So there's usually opportunities for collaboration and supporting that lead attorney. Then sometimes they have an attorney, but they're a more junior attorney. And so by that, I mean, they're very competent in the specialist area that they were hired to bring in, but they don't necessarily have the breadth of experience to be able to issue spot or understand the general counsel type responsibilities. And so sometimes I can come in and work in tandem with them. They might have a real estate or a contracts officer that is an attorney, and then I will come in and help. I've done that before. But legal is the last function to get any love and attention or resources. And so more often than not, it's definitely the last executive that they add to the executive team. And often there's not even an executive on the legal function. And so that's what's missing is like at the board level strategy and overseeing and knowing how to hire other people inside. So one thing I've done before is worked with a client about who they needed to hire. Did they need an attorney or did they need a paralegal or a contracts manager? And even if you don't understand all the differences between those, I do. So I can help the client understand, what it is that they need. And then it's also from a legal operations standpoint, which are things like legal forms, having all the documents in one place, having that contract management system to know what contracts are floating out there and when they renew and how to renew them and all the common terms, and then using project management software for what are all the pending items. So it's not just in a jumble of emails. So even if they have a very competent, let's even say general counsel level attorney, I can come in, support that general counsel, and then help build out the legal function itself, which is leaning on my organizational psychology background.
So that's a cool idea and thought process, I think, for every family to think about. And you're right. When I look at the budgets for these family offices, whenever we're coming in to support other family offices, either because they have people retiring or they don't have replacements or they just need support. The things that are often missing when I'm looking at their systems it's not necessarily sometimes it's the people, but it's the processes and the consistency around it. But it's also the budget side. You're right. Like, very often there will be an administrative line item. I think most families realize that you've got to keep your books and records in order. You've got to keep those plates spinning, but there's not a legal budget necessarily. So is that something
almost never?
Almost never. That's
yeah.
I was trying to give a little bit of credit, but you're right. It's almost never. So is that something that you can also come in and help a family with? How should we be thinking about it? What could that look like from a cost perspective? Because look, let's face it, cost is a real thing for a whole lot of family offices.
It is.
And the last thing you want is to get sprung on with a big bill.
Yeah. Well, first I'll say cost is a big thing. And that's one reason I like this concierge or fractional model, the same thing that you do, right? Is we're more flexible. So off the bat, that's beneficial to the family instead of having a static line item budget like for a general counsel, which they're expensive. A true general counsel is expensive full-time. But with the legal budget, most people don't have a legal budget. Most people don't even know their annual legal spend. Like if I ask the question, they often have no idea what it is. Legal just cannibalizes other budgets because it's seen as we got sued or we have to sue, we have to do this. And I'm not disagreeing with that statement necessarily, but you should have trends and you should be able to separate your legal spend based on recurring and non-recurring legal spend. Is it litigation or transactional? Is there one department? Is it all HR? If so, why? How do we fix that? And that's the kind of strategy discussions that a true general counsel helps with. And just a M&A specialist would never know. That's not in their scope, right? And so you need someone to help with that. But it's not just finance, it's understanding legal and understanding why litigation costs what it does and how to prevent it and why this spend over here is different than that spend. So you need someone with legal background to work with the financial team to create those budgets. Yes, and prevent it. How can we prevent the litigation in the first place, which is what I like doing now, which you never really know always, this lawsuit would have happened, but you can have a general idea that what you're doing is protecting the family or the business. And then also on top of all of that, there's not a lot of data out there about legal spend or legal budgets. The only data that I've ever been able to find on a consistent basis is Fortune 100 companies. And of course, they aren't going to match the legal spend of a family enterprise or a family office, and their needs are different. And the legal community is behind like the business community when it comes to productivity tools and software and all of that. And so the tools that are out there are very expensive because they just have a smaller market. And so I almost never suggest like legal specific software, but then sometimes people will go and spend a lot of money on like contracts management bespoke software. And I'm like, why did you use your money that way? There was definitely better ways for you to spend that money. And so it's just that kind of analysis. I will say, to give your listeners a little bit of a data point, the data point that I've sort of cobbled together from a lot of research that I've done is that your legal budget should be about 2 to 5% of your annual revenue for a business. And it depends on how regulated your industry is, how much froth you have. Like if you're doing a lot of M&A or a lot of transactions or a lot of litigation, it's going to be higher. But if your budget is a lot lower or a lot higher than that, there's probably some problems. And so that's just, I would be interested to have your listeners go and take a look. What is their legal spend? What is recurring, non-recurring? Can you split it up by departments? And then how does that compare to the revenue if it's an operating business or whatever other metric makes sense for the financial team?
Yeah. So if it's not an operating business, it's just a single family, they have an outsourced team, what metric would you?
Yeah, because there's no data out there. If someone has found this data, I would love to know. So please let both of us know, probably. The best, I think, would be, instead of tying it to a percentage, it's more the type of legal spend. So like I discussed, is it recurring, non-recurring? Is it litigation or is it deal flow? If so, what's like the average cost per lawsuit, per deal? And does that match what makes sense in the greater metrics? Because I can tell you, as a percentage of deal size or the amount in controversy of litigation, if that fee makes sense to me or not, because I've seen so many of them. And it's also about, what legal resources do you have available? Are you using them most effectively? So if you have the top 10 law firm doing your M&A deal, that might make sense if it's really large. But if it's just like a 5 million company that you're acquiring, that does not necessarily make sense. It's about managing all of that and having someone to pick the appropriate resource, not necessarily just go with the firm you used last time because that's the easy way to go, which is what a lot of clients do. And it makes sense because they have other things that they're responsible for. So you need someone focused on legal.
You made an interesting point in that oftentimes a family has one firm that they work with. And I do think, I think a lot of times with those bigger firms, they try and recognize that, okay, I don't need the $1,200 attorney reviewing a simple agreement or an interfamily loan. Our paralegal can do that. So I do think they try to do that from my experience, but it's still within the system. And you're still going to stay within that practice for the most part. And they're going to have their paralegal do it. Well, their paralegal may still be $400 or $500 an hour sometimes, depending on what the firm is. Also, the firm might not be a generalist firm. They may be a specialist firm. And yeah, sure, send us your estate planning documents. We'll take a look at them and draw out a tree. But you really want an estate planning attorney working through those documents. More than that, to circle back to your comment earlier about coordinating that legal team, I call it being an integrator because we're literally trying to integrate everybody into the system. But that is just as important of a team member in this scenario, because if you have your estate planning attorney, you have your business attorneys, and then you have everybody in this mix. I don't know how many times I have come across the business attorney says, oh, we're going to set it up as an S corp. We're going to do sets it all up. And then a year later, it gets back to the estate planning attorney. And the estate planning attorney is like, I can't do planning with an S corp. What were you thinking? And the business attorney's like, it was the right thing to do for the business. And they're like, yeah, but it's a family-owned business. I can't do anything with this now. And so without having, that is a true story that happened just very recently ago for us when we brought in a new family. And at that point, we were like, okay, so who's like, how are we going to fix this? Because we got to do the estate planning. And now we have this random S Corp out here that we got to figure out what to do with. And those are things that, because they're operating inside their specialty, they're not necessarily thinking about the crosswork, the intersection of how all of that's going to work.
Yeah, and that's just like a failure of the law firm model. The traditional law firm model is everybody is like this. I'm a specialist in estate planning and I'm not going to touch anything else because I don't know that much about those other things, which is fine. That's good. You don't want someone to try to do work that they're not competent to do. But that also means they don't have the insight to know how what they're doing is affecting the other competencies that are being involved. And it's always a balance of like ease of use of the plan or the structure with like tax mitigation, with like any other things that balance. And then if you have a family and a business, then there's two sets of those, and maybe four different components of the family. So then you start getting to this very complex like balance of everything, and something's going to win and something's going to lose. But you want to make that choice intentionally. And the only way you can make that choice intentionally is if someone is managing all of those things. And it might be the head of the family or the business, but one, they usually have other things they like or need to be doing. And two, unless they're a licensed attorney, which does happen where the head of the family is an attorney, they just don't have the background to understand the legal intricacies. And that's why they defer to their attorney, which is, I'm not saying don't defer to your attorney, but that attorney can't know everything that's going on if you don't let them know. And then we've come full circle. They're a specialist. They don't want to know those other things. And the law firm isn't set up to allow them to know those other things. And so then you need someone in the middle managing all of that. And it's a full-time job just to manage all those things.
Yes, indeed. Yes, it is. It absolutely. There is something to be said. There was I don't know if you have found this in your work, but so often the older, quote unquote, families that we work with, their mindset is, I'm going to give you the information that you need to know when you need to know it. And that works to a degree. And I can understand why a family would have that mindset in respect to, different kinds of information, of course. But at the end of the day, by keeping practitioners siloed, you run into these exact issues and the things that the unintended consequences, the unintended ripple effect of practitioners that don't know what else is out there, or they're not able to take in that information and see 7 curves down the road that actually this is going to create a problem and be in direct conflict with your, tax planned estate plan. That's a problem. And a lot of families get into a jam specifically for that reason. And a lot of times it's too late because it gets figured out. The jam comes up when it's too late to do anything about.
Yeah, especially with estate planning. Once certain acts are taken, you can't really walk them back. And it's very true. You need a true collaborative team. And a lot of people use that word like, I'm collaborative, but like there's nothing about the way they provide their service that is actually collaborative, which is very frustrating. But no one would ever, when you think about how most families and companies use outsourced legal providers like traditional law firms, they would never do that for other functions. Like I would at least hope not. Like you wouldn't have your estate planning attorney never talk to your accountant about things, I would hope, or never talk to your money manager, or you would never have like your sales and your marketing divisions so siloed that they never talk to each other. But that's what people do with the legal function. And that's because it's expensive and it's the last place they put their money. And often for many people, it's just overwhelming. And they either are confused or they legitimately do not like dealing with attorneys or with legal. And I would like to fix that for people.
I agree. I hear that a lot actually from families. I'm like, that needs to run by legal. And they're like, no, I don't want to run that by legal. I'm like, I'm not doing you justice. I'm not doing my job if I'm not running it by the appropriate people to make sure that you're getting the best advice possible.
Yeah. And it's because of the lack of a quality collaborative relationship with those attorneys. Yeah.
And they know in the back of their mind, even for families, that money is not a big deal. Like it, if they spend $10,000 or $20,000 to get something done, that's not changing their lives. But yet, almost always in the back of their mind, it's no, my attorney's 50.
It's the lack of value, right? It's the lack of value. So they pay, and then what they get is not what they need. And so, of course, regardless of whether or not that amount of money is significant to you, why do you want to pay for something when you're not getting the value for it? Because I've worked with families where they pay a specialist, that specialist, spends 20 hours of time to draft a memo, and then they read it and they're like, I don't know what to do with this information. So, of course, better would be an attorney who helps you through that yourself, but I can also do that and sort of make sure that the attorney provides the practical advice or translate what they've done into practical advice. And it is almost worthless to get a hypothetical legal opinion versus like a back of the cuff practical piece of advice. Like, yes, it's better to have both actually, but many people that I work with, even though I tell them you can go get a specialist and know that you're absolutely getting the tip top, response, what they want is just, hey, do you think this is too risky? And that's all they care about. Or, okay, I don't want to rewrite this whole contract so it's 20 pages long, but what are like the 3 red flags? And then they may say, fine, those red flags are there, but I'm going to proceed anyway. And that's their choice because they're the client.
They know what
they
the
need
red
someone
flags are.
To give them that advice. Yeah.
And they're willing to take that risk. That's right.
And, there's always malpractice insurance in the background.
Oh my gosh. Well, which brings us back to this concept that you're now using, of this subscription model for this concierge general counsel service. They don't have to worry about, no, I'm not going to send her this 5-page document to review. I read it. It's fine. And when in reality, there was a sentence in there that gave them no rights if the company went under, or it happens again. It happens.
Yeah, it does. And it's surprising. And unfortunately, legal terms and concepts don't always match up with what I'm going to call like the common definition of things. And so even though your reading comprehension, you're a smart person, you have great reading comprehension, that doesn't mean that you're interpreting it the way it's going to be interpreted. And I think it's beneficial to have someone that understands you, right? Understands the client, and then understands the business and can help keep all those things in mind while giving advice. And with some clients, like the number one thing they like about the model is that I sort of stand between them and all the other attorneys. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, I filter it for them and they have a single point of contact and I handle things first. And if it needs their input, then I bring them in and it frees up their mental space, but their time as well. And many people say that's the most valuable thing of all the things I do is just being someone that they know is handling legal, that they can take that off both their to-do list and their mental weight. And it's hard to find someone like that in an attorney, even if they're competent in what they do, they're doing this piece, right? So that's also what I like to hear from my clients is that they feel like that they can trust me to handle it and they feel protected. Those are the best things I can hear.
I love it. Translation and filtering.
Yes. And sometimes protection, like I will literally stand in, not like physically, but conceptually stand in between them and people if they don't want to have to bother with it. Yeah.
I just think it's so fun that our businesses are really so similar, just focused on different areas of service for a family.
Yes, I always say I'm just a consultant. My skill is legal services, but I am a consultant at heart. And even though that seems obvious, a lot of attorneys don't necessarily think about it that way, like customer service. What do you provide? What is the value you provide? It's not just the knowledge in your head or the time it takes you to complete a task. The clients don't really care about those the same way they do about value of what you're doing for them.
Could not agree more. So as we kind of wrap up our conversation, is there anything, final thoughts or notes that you would want a family who is listening or an advisor, another practitioner of, of a service that you would want to leave us with a nugget to remember or to look for to help a family realize that maybe a service like yours, this concierge general counsel, makes sense for them?
Sure. So I have like a multi-tiered answer because I'm an attorney and I can't ever answer a question quickly. But one, I would say the biggest thing I see from a lot of my clients is they just don't give themselves the space, or they don't feel like they have the permission to pick an attorney that really matches them and what they need. Like they feel like they have to go to a specific firm, or they have a vision in their head of what an attorney looks like, regardless of whether that's someone they want to spend any time with, right? And of course, there's always certain attorneys that you're not going to mesh with 100%, but you need them for a particular thing because they're so great at it. That's fine. But the person you deal with day to day, they should match you. If they talk over you and you need space to think, that's not good. If they like email, but you like to talk on the phone, that's not good. And it's not that anybody's like bad at their job. It's just you need to find the person that meshes with you. You need to put as much effort into your attorney as you would hiring like a personal assistant that's going to be in your home and around your kid. And so that's like the piece of advice I give is, like I'm not the right attorney for everybody. And that's great because I don't want to work with every client either. I have who I want to work with. And so you should make sure that every service provider, honestly, but in this case, I'll limit it to attorneys, is someone that you enjoy spending time with and that you enjoy the conversations you have with them. And then from a more like specific example or piece of advice is if you feel like you don't understand what's going on with the legal items that you have or the advice you get, you don't know what to do with it, or things take too long, that's when you should start thinking about hiring some either in-house or a fractional or concierge general counsel. So those are the pieces. So it's like I mentioned before, if you have an operating company, it's the legal budget of like 3 to 5%. If it's a family that doesn't have an operating company, it's more where's the legal spend going and does it make sense? And then if the executive or the head of the family is spending more than about 20% of their time on legal, that's another metric when you might need a general counsel. And so it's different every time, but it's if you need systems, you need a collaborative partner that you enjoy spending time with, or you need a handle on the legal budget. Those are all the items for either the family or the advisor to pay attention to.
Okay. We would also, just as a note, point families back to their trends. If they are receiving trend report analysis from their books and records, that would also be a place to go back to see where have you spent, how much have you spent, and what was it on?
Yes, that's a great piece of advice. And I think using that financial data and trends that you provide is just like invaluable, because so many times I come in and there's no legal data of any kind. So having someone like you to already have that data, even if you might not have analyzed it that way before, now you can go back and analyze it that way and have that conversation. It's really valuable.
Awesome. Love it. Okay, where can, if families are interested or other practitioners, advisors are interested in reaching out to you, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, first is my website, which is continuum.legal. And I love the name Continuum, but and we didn't really talk about why, and that's fine. But it can be difficult to spell for people because it's not a common word. And then there's no .com at the end. So don't do that either. It's continuum.legal. But also you can find me online. My name is very unique, Koby, Koby. There's not a lot of people named Koby, definitely not a lot of attorneys named Koby. And then my email is koby@continuum.legal.
Amazing. Okay. We will also link to your website, your LinkedIn,
and
I'll put your email in the show notes. And folks, I encourage you. Koby is incredibly approachable. She's a great listener. She's easy to talk to. Like she said, she's not perfect for everybody, just like we're not perfect for everybody. But if you find yourself in a position of you really could use some legal advice more often than not, but you struggle with making that phone call or worry a little bit about it or just don't have anybody to go to, I would highly encourage you to reach out and just have a conversation with her about what's happening and how she might be able to work with you, or if she can refer you out to somebody else because you do need someone more specific. I know that she would be more than happy to do that because we all want to get you to the right people ultimately and have the family have the best service, whatever that is for you. So with that, Koby, thank you. I really enjoyed our conversation today and appreciate you. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you. It was a fun time and I would love to do it again.
Awesome. All right. Have a great afternoon. We'll talk to you later. Thank you for joining me today on the Family Office Success Podcast. I hope you found this conversation insightful and valuable as you navigate the complexities of family office services. If you're looking for more ideas or resources or want to explore how we can support your family office or your family through services and training and strategy, connect with me on LinkedIn or visit our website at whiteriverconsultants.com, and be sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates and expert insights. And if you're ready to take your family office to the next level, consider joining our mastermind where we can help you manage that chaos and create better outcomes for the families you serve. Until next time, I'm Christi Van Wright, and this has been the Family Office Success Podcast. Take care and keep building for the future.